Okay. Oh, I didn't have anything open on my end. Let's see. Not hearing any. Okay, yeah, we're live. Hey, guys. Hey, we're just dealing with a bit of some internet issues, but if we sound good, give us a thumbs up in the chat, and I will fire this bad boy up. Stoked to have Etienne back on for round 3. Here we go. Sounding good,
That's
Giselle?
right. This is number 3, huh? Cool.
Number 3.
Okay. Yeah, we're live. Hey, guys. Sounds good. Okay, here we go. I hear a little bit of a feedback from one of y'all. Sound good? Give us a thumbs up in the chat. Is that you, Bear?
That was me, but no more.
Okay, that means we're good. That's the sign, Etienne, that we're on. The old feedback. Okay, here we go, guys. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with our Commander-in-Chief, Dr. Bear Paul Lando, helming the ship of Alfa Vedic here in the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still
No
reigns.
hail to the chief music.
Oh man, I got to talk to our producer, Bear, and get on that.
Well, I'll stand by while you guys hum it together if you want.
Yeah, I got to talk to myself being the producer, I guess. I got to up our production value a bit, huh? No, it's great to be here. It's a rainy day here in the great state of Jefferson. Day 4, I think, of torrential downpours. But it's cleansing, and it's what we expect living up here in the lower Pacific Northwest. The waterfalls are coming back, the streams are flowing, the river's high, the salmon are coming in, and Bear, as Etienne was just remarking before we went live, looks like you just got back from fishing.
Yeah. Well, with these recent early storms here, I'm ready to move back to Hawaii, but don't tell anybody.
Well, I'm super pumped and everything Alfa Vedic's been up to. In fact, I'm going to hit some of our 0 Point Gold B right here, baby. This is our new product line, Bear. I don't even put it in anything. I just take the dropper, right in the mouth. It's sweet. It's powerful formulation. It's replacing our older 0 Point formulation. It's got a nice sweetness to it from the Shizandra. I believe it's in this. And man, that's good. And then I chase it with a little beer. And
there you go.
There we go.
I just put mine in a nice cocktail glass with Jack Daniels.
Woo! Actually, no, guys. This is a hoppy hop water. Already been up for 4 hours, so I get to have a hop water. And actually, then maybe hit a little bit of our dental, our restorative tooth serum. A little ad to start, but no, I'm loving the.
You're not supposed to drink that. But who knows? Give it a shot. It might be good.
I take it a little. I'll drink it every now and then. But no, I'm loving the 0 Point Gold. Check it out, guys, on alfavedic.com. Really exciting. It's a very extensive new line that we've dropped, and we've got Perform Out. We've got Shen, which I actually need to get that, Bear. We've got what else? Matrix, which has the sea vegetables in it. So these are formulated for specific design for your lifestyle, and they are not just, as you say, Bear. We don't just slap a bunch of ingredients together and call it a day. There's a specific formulation design with each one of these. So go check it out on Alfa Vedic.
We mimic natural design, and they aren't just formulas with pre-made extracts made by other companies and shipped to us. We do everything from scratch, from homegrown and partner growers for things that we don't grow ourselves. And it's all concentrated here in the lab. And that's kind of the difference between homemade chocolate chip cookies and something you buy in the store. There's no comparison.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also how we fund ourselves, which we're going to go into today, in how, as one of the solutions from getting outside this mindset of state, as we have Etienne back on with us for round 3. Super pumped on having him in here. And also, guys, go check out musicandsky.com. We just launched a bit of a redesign as we move into phase 2 of our mission, which is getting the land acquisition and not doing the event anymore on other people's land, and actually following through with what we talk about and having community on the land, and working with like Marsha Ann on getting set up in the private Marcia, if you listen to this, I owe you a call. But check that out. So that's another thing we can talk about today, which is how to be sovereign on the land. And there are no, there's a lot of excuses that people put out there about I can't afford that. There's too much cost, but we can talk about that a bit today. There's always a solution, and I'm really stoked on that. So check out Music and Sky. Anything else, Bear, before we bring in Etienne?
No, let's I have a lot of comments, but let's get into it here.
I'm sure you do. Uh, what a time, what a world we're living in. Um, we affectionately called this, and Etienne is dealing with some internet issues right now. You've gone full black on us now, so we'll see. Hopefully, this is going to work for us today. Etienne, just so you know, we don't even see you now. But we're affectionately calling this "Rest in
Oh,
Peace."
there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Rest in peace, U.S. Inc. And really fun times. An established military axiom amongst the rank and file is to never volunteer. You got that right. Similar to the enlisted, the larger collective is taught to keep their heads down and do the time. Fact is, we all volunteer to do someone else's bidding, even if it comes at a horrific expense. The American experiment was founded on voluntarism. That is, the birthright of every individual to self-determine. In other words, the concept of an earthly authority above our divine rights is absurd, even through a more base mechanical lens. This timely Alfacast welcomes back voluntarist and author Etienne de la Boetie2-RIP to examine the trajectory of the good ship U.S. Inc. in light of present post-election euphoria. Etienne is the founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation, the author of Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, and the editor of the Art of Liberty Daily News on Substack. His 5 Meme Fridays on there, which is super fun. Delivers hard-hitting voluntarist memes and the best of alternative media. He just produced Liberty on the Rocks in Sedona. I believe, was that your third one, Etienne?
It was our second.
Second one. Okay, awesome. We'll talk about that today. It's a voluntarism conference which brought together world-class legal scholars, economists, and political philosophers to make the case that all the legitimate, non-redistributive services provided by government would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market and real freedom without the waste, fraud, abuse, and extortion of government. He is currently working on his second book, Voluntarism, How the Old ISM Fair for Everyone Leads to Harmony, Prosperity, and Good Karma for All, which is available for pre-order at voluntarism-book.org. We'll have all the show notes. We do have the show notes below this video here, so please go support that work. And really, it's all about us working together as a community to provide the solutions for each other. We can't do this alone. Voluntarism isn't about isolation, right? It's about working together as a community and developing our own marketplace. Bear Lando, take it away, my friend.
Thank you. And thank you, Etienne, for being with us again. And as I said prior, this is a very timely episode because here in the U.S., the conservative element, I don't like to box myself into any label personally, but everybody's euphoric. And, you know, we won and things are going to get better. And there's a certain gentleman that's going to save us. So what say you about all that?
Well, it's kind of funny. I call it the selection, not the election. And, you know, my first book was Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, where I make the case that government was never really intended to protect life, liberty, and property, but really is best thought of as a technique for robbing and controlling populations. The subtitle of the book was How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government, the Media, and Academia. And I think we're in a situation where, we have warlords in suits that pretend to let us elect them. I think that Trump and Kamala were both playing on the same team. And I think if you think, going back, many different elections, both the Republican and the Democratic candidate were completely aligned on the issues that are important to the bankers at the top of the pyramid. They're completely aligned on fractional reserve banking, even though it's inflationary and stealing the value out of everybody else's money. They're completely aligned on trillion-dollar bailouts to banks and corporations. They're completely aligned on confiscatory taxation. They were both completely aligned on the COVID. Trump was the father of the vaccine. And so there really is no real change. The one alternative that is never, discussed, is never allowed to be mentioned, is voluntarism, which is the idea that all relations should be voluntary. Nobody has rights that other people don't. Nobody has the ring of power because there isn't a ring of power. And the idea that the world is a self-organizing system, it produces spontaneous order. And really, everything the government does would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market, by mutual aid societies, by insurance companies, by nonprofits, by armed service providers, by dispute resolution firms, by genuine charities. And we just really don't need government. And so, I just got back from Sedona. We had a conference that we'll be releasing soon at sedona.artofliberty.org with the archive. And we really had some of the world's leading economists and legal scholars and political philosophers to break down how you could have everything that you want from the government except for redistribution. You can't rob Peter to pay Paul, that's immoral. But if you really think about it, most of what the government does is provide services, whether that service is the post office delivering the mail, whether that's the, Amtrak running passenger rail, service, whether it's air traffic control, whether it's running, a incredibly unfavorable pension system. Whatever it is that the government does, could be done by the free market. And we had folks ranging from David Friedman, Walter Block, Larkin Rose, Derek Brose, myself, and others breaking down just how you could get everything that you want from the government without the waste, fraud, abuse, and extortion.
Yeah, well said. And, I think the thing that escapes most people is that this so-called election was not even to install a president for the constitutional republic. And in a way, it's kind of ironic because it is a private corporation. So, but somehow this private corporation got in a position where they could grant themselves the authority to commit violence. And that is their power. So, I'll be somewhat of an optimist today, even though I know this election had nothing to do with me because I did not volunteer to be part of this corporation or become a corporate citizen or subject. On the other hand, a positive thing I've seen come out in the recent months and years is that there's a lot of exposure through all this theater. Even with the new administration coming in, there's some rhetoric being thrown at the Federal Reserve and maybe bringing in Ron Paul and doing away with the IRS and that sort of thing. So I'm sort of hoping that somewhere behind the scenes, we've got a lot of help, which I believe we do, probably not from earthly powers, but maybe this is a two-step out of the corporate tyranny back into our republic, and we need to go through this process. I don't know, is that a possibility, do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what I think is happening is I think more and more people every day are realizing the scam of government. And they're realizing it in a way that I think produces this one-way revolution, which is once you realize that government is both illegitimate, you can never have a legitimate government. You can't delegate rights that you don't have yourself to a representative to represent you doing something you don't have the ability to do yourself. You can't be bound by a social contract that you didn't and sign. And if my fiance and myself can't vote to rob bears, there's two of us and one of him. It just doesn't matter how much it scales. And once you realize that the media is kind of ownership of the internet, are providing what I like to call a brute force manufactured consensus. And so that brute force manufactured consensus is every channel, government is legitimate, the elections aren't rigged, there's no power behind the throne. If you don't like how it's going, you're just going to have to vote harder. I could go on, but like that brute force manufactured consensus, more and more people are seeing through it. They're realizing there is a man behind the curtain in the media. And when Trump comes into power and then completely betrays his base by reinstalling the swamp, people like even Republicans are going, what just happened? I thought we were going to clear the swamp. And now he just has announced, swamp things ranging from Marco Rubio to, his chief of staff is a former lobbyist for big pharma, junk food, and tobacco. I mean, it's already a nasty cast of characters, and I think even the Republicans, they're probably scratching their heads, going, "Why is every single one of them a card-carrying Zionist?" And like, is this
Yeah,
is
right.
like we've got a government that's essentially been captured by Zionist interests, and they're installing these politicians through APAC, and then they're voting to have the United States hand them, over $130 billion. It's been like I think it's somewhere north of $130 billion. So they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to buy up our politicians, including Trump, who got 100 million from Miriam Adelson, and they're handing billions out the back door, and it's starting to get obvious. And so I think even Republicans are starting to figure out what's going on here.
But but Etienne, they slip. Etienne, they got Elon Musk now as this new agency. It's going to be the Agency of Government Efficiency. Talk about a
So let's
total
talk about Elon
contradiction.
Musk, who I like to call DARPA's boy, that takes technologies that were invented or improved on the taxpayer nickel and privatizes the profits to insiders. Elon Musk is, I think it's somewhere north of $17 billion in government contracts. The one of the top things that got Tesla off the ground were government tax credits. Elon is launching satellites for the NSA and for the government, like
Helium balloons, you mean?
potentially, but like he's launching something and he's getting the contracts from the government, and he is a Pentagon contractor, and he's running Starlink is a military network, the Boring Company who digs tunnels underground, but the military for deep underground military bases. I think that Tesla's battery tech was probably, DARPA tech, initially. I think that they're, picking the winners and then propping these billionaires up, especially Elon, who's still censoring X and who's trying to wire people into the matrix with Neuralink. It's
I
unbelievable
think
that
you,
people think
I
that
think
these
we need to
guys are
give.
not in on this.
I was just going to say, I think we owe Elon a little credit, though, for piercing the firmament and taking us to Mars.
or or his ability to show how a car can do that as well, Bear.
Exactly.
It's obvious to
Yeah,
me
I, you know,
when I just want to say, when I hear that man talk, just to me, this is my own personal perspective, and what I see is he seems like he's MK Ultra'd. The way he speaks, and like just the way he's sort of robotic and stuff, it seems like, yeah, he's definitely a mind controlled, propped up individual that is put there to ensure or to make people believe that there is an entrepreneurial class that's still driving America, right? And it's not some sort of intelligence operation, which to me, as you're just putting forth, Etienne, it's NASA 2.0. It's very much that. Yeah.
So let me just tell you guys, I've never shared this on any other podcast before, but this is kind of my theory of what's going on. One of the things that's going on with Elon Musk. Uh, uh, Duke University, decades ago, did an experiment where they took male monkeys and they put them in front of a television set, and they had images that would go by in front of the monkeys. And so the monkeys were drinking juicy juice out of a little hamster bottle. And as long as they kept drinking the juicy juice, the images would go by. But at any time, they could not drink the juicy juice and the image would freeze and they could see, they could stare at the image for a little bit. And so essentially that's the delay of gratification. And so the monkeys were paying to see certain images. Now, what two images do you think the monkeys were willing to pay to see? They're male monkeys. Survey says number one answer, you got it.
Female
Rear
monkey.
female monkey hindquarters.
Yeah.
Number one answer. Okay, makes sense. Okay, just like humans. The other one was more fascinating, and I learned this at a tech conference in Boston, and people were throwing out, all these different things, bananas, food, fighting, all these different things, and nobody got it. And the most fascinating thing I learned in 2006 is that the monkeys were willing to pay to see pictures of higher status monkeys. And so there's monkeys live in a troop of monkeys. It's a group of monkeys. There might be 20 monkeys in a troop, and there's a defined pecking order based on beat down. Okay, which monkey can beat down the others? All right. And if you're monkey number 3 in the troop, you're willing to pay to see pictures of monkey 2 or 1, but you're not willing to pay to see pictures of monkey 4, 5, 6 through 20. Okay. And so if you're monkey number 5, you'll pay to see pictures of 1 through 4, but you won't pay to see 6 through 20. And so Elon Musk is the manufactured highest status monkey that has essentially been designed to steer people's attention. So they put him on the top of X/Twitter, which is kind of like a known disinformation outlet that was caught censoring people. All of the emails came out. Elon released them. I think Elon released them because they were already, some other Twitter employee was already, had already probably released that archive, or that was already coming out in some other way. And so I think he jumped in front of that train. But what came out and what's popularly known as the Twitter emails is the fact that Twitter was censoring information for a variety of government agencies, and was populated with FBI agents. Mint Press News did ex FBI agents. The content moderation team was populated by ex information FBI agents. By the way, the content moderation team at Facebook is populated by ex CIA agents, and the content moderation team at TikTok is ex State Department, and that's all Mint Press News, a variety of different information investigations where they've gone forward and looked up everybody's profiles on LinkedIn and correlated the information. But so Elon Musk is sitting at the top of a system that has been designed to algorithmically censor information, shadow ban certain voices, demonetize others, and algorithmically censor what information that you can see on the platform. They have been caught doing that. They're still doing that. And so who better to sit on top of that platform and tweet things at the world but the highest status monkey that they manufactured, understanding these kind of basics of behavioral psychology that allow them to steer perception in a way that a lot of people don't understand that it's being done.
Yeah,
And
I think that takeaway from the Duke experiment is perhaps the human species doesn't represent the next evolutionary tier beyond monkeys.
Well, I'll tell you what the takeaway is that if you understand the basics of behavioral psychology, it's very, very easy for moneyed interests to come in and steer things like elections especially when there's only two choices to vote for. You can have blue government or you can have red government, but you're going to get government and you don't have a choice. And if you don't like it, we've got some shave-headed cult members that we've put through unethically manipulative techniques in the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts and JROTC and ROTC and Young Marines and basic training and police and military training, etc., that will enforce the commandments of this artificially indoctrinated statist religion on their neighbors at the point of a gun if you don't go along with what they're telling you out of Washington, D.C. And so, I mean, that really is it, is that if you understand the basics of behavioral psychology and you're willing to cheat and you're organized behind the scenes and you're controlling what comes across the media, that it's very, very easy for you to manipulate the vast mass of humanity that does not understand that what they're seeing on the screens is being controlled to them, and that they're only seeing, that 98% of what they see is because somebody wants them to see it.
And for those who are fans of Elon and X and saying that's a place of free speech, what are you talking about? I personally can't stand that platform. I don't use it. I feel like it was actually created and the infrastructure of it set up for these snippets of short back and forth to create a dialectic of tension and angst and anger. It does not lead to any kind of proper debate, or it's just people shouting at each other. And I believe it's part of the tension machine that we see with the left versus right. It just propels the dialectic.
Well, the main thing that it does is, they're putting controlled opposition voices into your feed that are giving you things that are going to give you a little dopamine rush to get you to subscribe to those controlled opposition voices, to where then they can steer what you see. So at the same time that they're de-indexing and deplatforming and demonetizing and shadow banning the authentic voices of the developing alternative media, they're going ahead and they're putting things in your feed that you didn't subscribe to that guy. Oh, look, but I like that meme, or I like that short video, or he's saying things that I like. And so the next thing you know, they steered you onto the platform. When you sign up for X, they're going to recommend certain voices to you. And then when if you take the recommendations, you're going to do it. When you get a new Android phone, they've already got X pre-installed. And so they've already got Facebook pre-installed. They've already got, so they're steering the information the population receives from the base operating system layer through the applications that are provided with the phone down to algorithmically censoring and steering the content to get people on to controlled opposition voices that they're putting in your feed, whether or not you subscribe to them or not, and then hoping that you're going to latch on, subscribe to where you can be kind of steered more effectively by the controlled opposition voices that they're promoting at the same time that they're demonetizing, de-indexing, and shadow banning the authentic voices.
Wow.
And even more sinister, they're doing this with technologies that are poisoning our neurology and also dampening our bandwidth of perception at the same time. And, we talk about voluntarism, and Mike and myself, we've always leaned in that direction. My camera's going berserk here. But what it really represents,
it's a voluntarist, Bear. It's got a mind of its own.
Yeah. What we're really looking at is, there's two camps of people that want to be left alone and people that don't want to leave you alone. And you're talking about dopamine rush. And, unfortunately, the folks that are on, all these platforms have never experienced an authentic dopamine rush from being self-determined, running your own business, being master of your own ship, being in full mature adulthood. We'll say, I've really never had that much of a problem with governments and all that, all that represents. I understand it. They're They're demonic. They have nothing in within their agenda that isn't about just basically exterminating us and everything good. So the problem I have is the population that just sits down and goes for it. And it's really, nice, it'll sound harsh maybe, but it's really a lack of maturity. It's quite juvenile to accept government controls. It really means you have a lack of a backbone.
Yeah.
The only disdain I feel, I don't want to hate on anybody, but the folks out in normie world that are really not only going along with the program, but then really presenting speed bumps along the way for the rest of us that just want to have a life. So what we have now here is, I think, a real spiritual issue with the population. Are we ready to grasp our true potentials and fulfill our divine destiny or not? So at this, just to lead into what's going on this juncture in time, are we getting any closer? Go back to my original question. Do you think this latest version of the charade is actually going to maybe expose more against their own plans and wake even more people up to the level that we reach that critical mass point where people realize that, wow, government doesn't do anything. They've never produced anything. They've never done, anything beneficial for anybody.
So before I get to that, because you just said something really, really important, and I just want to kind of circle back to it because what you talked about is in behavioral psychology, another kind of insight that the enemy twists against us is there's something called evolutionary leadership theory, and in evolutionary leadership theory, it posits that most people are followers. They're looking for a leader because human beings are tribal, and it was advantageous to have a strong leader in the tribe. And so if you understand this kind of basic, psychological, system, then it's very easy for you to manipulate by offering the tribe a choice of two different leaders that you both control. You can have government leader blue or government leader red, but you're going to get government leader. And the only people that don't really fall for that are people that are leaders themselves. And so if you're a leader yourself, you don't have that same desire to have a leader because you are a leader. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that the truth movement and the voluntarism movement and the freedom movement, call it whatever you want, is growing so fast is because it's populated with individual leaders that are saying, hey, we've got to resist this, we've got to take action, we've got to do podcasts, we've got to create alternative media, we've got to create alternatives to the monetary system, we've got to start our own thing, we got to do our own thing. And so there's so many leaders that it's blowing up, and it's creating, it's starting to siphon off people as they realize how they're being, scammed by the government and media system. There's plenty of leaders over here that can help you find your way. And so that's really, one of the good things that I see is happening. The other real good thing I see is happening is it's, what I like to refer to as the one-way revolution, which is once you understand that government's a scam, you can't have a legitimate government. Once you understand the media's in on it and they're steering your perception algorithmically or through, monopoly media or through, a dozen other ways, then you're kind of out. You're like, okay, I understand. The magician can only, pull the trick until the audience understands how he pulls the trick. And then once you understand how the magician's doing the trick, you're kind of out. And so I see that as like a one-way revolution. We win in the end because there's no way to stop the signal in the information age. We're seeing it grow, like the Liberty on the Rocks conference that we had this year was twice the size of the Liberty on the Rocks conference last year. We streamed to 500 plus, folks on Civil, which is kind of a new, as a new streaming platform for libertarians and voluntarists, intellectuals. Where we reached, probably 5, 6 times the amount of people that we reached last year. just on the live stream, and we haven't even released the archives yet. And so, we're getting the message out. We're getting it farther and farther. We're growing exponentially. It's a very small base right now, but it's only going in one direction, and it is destined for, viral growth because nobody likes to get chumped. Nobody likes to get fooled. And once people realize how the system works, then they're out and they're telling their friends, their neighbors, and their colleagues. And so I think that's where we are right now.
Yeah, and I don't think we have to wait for anybody in any quasi government to catch up to us or to agree with us or to go along with us. We start to win as individuals as soon as we take the first step towards self-determination. Your life changes immediately. So I think that's something we all need to consider. It's not out there, it's in each one of us individually.
And that was the topic of Derek Brose's address to Liberty on the Rocks was exit and build, kind of things that you can do today. You don't have to, wait for orders from headquarters. You can just leave and you can go build your own thing and, let the system collapse in the dust behind you. But like that's kind of what's going on as well. You guys mentioned that you're trying to get land and say, like I know so many, other, intentional voluntarist libertarian communities. I know so many people that are beginning to homestead and are, creating partnerships with other trusted people to be able to, have a place to go should everything collapse. There is, this is already happening. We're just shining the spotlight on it.
Yeah, I think another important element around this is this idea of contracting, right? And how even in the public sphere of what we call government, which is really just a consortium of corporations that has relationships via commercial contract. And so that's something we talk about with the law stuff, right? And it all has is basically been converted to commercialism. So this one having an understanding of how you can use rescission to get out of those contracts that you have been put in either by your parents or yourself unknowingly, because they like to use the dialectic and tricky legal language to get you to go into these contracts, to agree to them. But then two, how we can do that ourselves, right? To have consensus among ourselves so that we can contract with each other in these communities outside of the purview of the system. And did anyone at your event talk about that and on the law side? Because for me, Etienne, I feel like that's one major element that's sort of missing in the voluntarism side is a deeper understanding of law.
I agree. We actually had Brad Logan at the event, but he did not speak. He was kind of on my short list, but what we ended up doing is we ended up just having one single day of speakers. And so we really kind of kept it light. It was funny that Brad Logan, who's an expert in that, was there, but was not a speaker. But what we really tried to do at the event was take people through, number one, like we started out with Larkin Rose, who kicked it off on the illegitimacy of government on its face, just in case anybody in the audience or watching at home had any doubts whatsoever that government was legitimate, desirable, or necessary. We just kind of, Larkin just kind of obliterated that right from the beginning. Then I kind of took over and really talked about, there's a lot of different ways that the free market produces what people think of as public goods for free without the waste, fraud, abuse, and extortion of government. And so some of these are like the invisible hand, which is, Adam Smith's quote, "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that you get your daily bread, but from his own self-interest." And so New York City wakes up to, piping hot bagels every morning and strawberries and avocados and things from around the world, not because the baker loves you, but because they want to improve their own lot in life. They want better things for their family. So they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and begin cooking bagels without any kind of, Department of cooking bagels or anything like that. There's no, top-down centralized, system required to deliver all of the food in the supermarket or manufacture automobiles or smartphones or things that are incredibly, incredibly complicated. And so, why would we assume that the places where the government has inserted itself would be any different? And that's really kind of what James Corbett, he phoned one in from Japan, and talked about how the free market would be able to deliver toothbrushes without history of toothbrushes. And then he really brought it back, and he circled back to when the Soviet Union really did have a ministry of toothbrushes and how that worked out for them, and how they tried to produce everything from pantyhose to consumer goods, and they fell on their face and they failed. And so, what we've learned is the free market does it better, faster, and cheaper. And so, why not maximize freedom? Like a lot of people jokingly say, real socialism or real communism has never ever worked. If we just had real socialism or real communism, well, we're arguing and saying, well, hey, real freedom has never been tried either. And so what we do know is that almost communism and almost socialism, literally killed tens and tens of millions of people and impoverished hundreds of millions of people, while almost freedom has lifted billions of people out of abject poverty. And so why don't we just go a little further, and instead of having almost freedom, why don't we have real freedom? And if I believed in copyright, I would actually copyright real freedom, like capital REAL, bolded, italicized, and underlined to distinguish it from the fake freedom that you're taught in the mandatory government school. But if we had real freedom, I think that society would be much more harmonious and much more prosperous. You wouldn't have to fight, over the school board. You would be able to just send your child to the school that you wanted him to go to. You don't have to, use the government's rapidly depreciating fiat paper tickets. You could choose whatever money is holding its value the best, and buying more and more every year. You would have real choices, where right now, you're really forced at the point of a gun to use the postal service. You're forced at the point of a gun to use Amtrak for passenger rail service. You're forced at the point of a gun to use the FAA. No matter how many new fees they keep adding on to your airplane tickets every year. And so one of the things that we tried to do in the conferences is show, in the case of like the FAA, Canada privatized their air traffic control system over a decade ago. It's the second largest air traffic control system in the world. It moves something north of like 40 million, controls 40 million flights a year, and planes are not dropping out of the sky in Canada. We just don't need the government. And that was the point that we were trying to make. And, David Friedman, Milton Friedman's son, and a respected economist in his own right, came in and talked about how you could have law, without the government. And so really complicated things that people think, oh, we just have to have the government. When you really hear the experts, discuss the options on the table, you're going to walk away going, oh, wow, I didn't realize that we really don't need government. But that's what we really drove home in Sedona, is you don't really need government.
I'd like to, could we get some more comments about what Mike brought up about the legalities and the lawfare and all the things that alternative groups have understood, and that we've all been defrauded. We're held in tow by invisible contracts that we never understood that we're entering into in the first place. Now, I went down every rabbit hole, in UCC commerce and non-Article 3 courts, and everything that the fraud represents. And in recent years, I've gone pretty much full circle, where I'm not even playing that game anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that's wrong. It was a very important learning process for me to understand, what I was dealing with out there in my life. On the other hand, it seems to me counterproductive to interact with them on any level,
Mhm.
especially when you're noticing them, sending them letters, and all legit stuff. But why are we even interfacing with any agency in the first place? I just choose not to do it anymore. And it seems like that might be more in alignment with a true voluntarist, not to play the game on any level, even if it means countering with real legitimate processes the things that they've defrauded us with. So I don't know, what place does it have interfacing with them, just trying to set them straight, or should we just not play at all?
So I agree with you completely. And so so government is illegitimate on its face. There's no way that one group of men can legitimately acquire the power to rule other men. You can't do it with an election. You can't do it with a coronation. It has been the biggest scam in all of human history. Now, the way that that illegitimate criminal system exercises its power is by forcing people into its own court system, where everybody is forced to play by its crooked rules. And it's in that system they have taught that they've got a group of financially interested lawyers and judges that impose that system on everybody else. And then they've got some shave-headed cult members that have been raised in the mandatory government school system and the affiliated scouting programs, using unethically manipulative techniques to get them. There's an obedience component to the mandatory government school system. And once you go through the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts and the explorers, the police explorers and the military explorers and the JROTC and the ROTC, and they do all the flag worship, and they do all the the hazing and the sleep deprivation and everything that they do in military basic training and police training and everything like that. You're going to come out and
Medical school.
you're going to be willing to use violence on peaceful people, okay, in a way that is frankly is dishonorable and should be embarrassing to the people that are wearing the uniform, the single form, which is kind of like an an artificial conformity. They force the military and the police into these artificial conformities. And so I think that until we expose that system and we get these, if we could flip the military, they're going to be mad when they understand how they've been tricked. I think that they're ultimately going to be on our side and they're going to be ticked. And so like that's really, the task is at hand. It's hard to, it's like you're in an abusive relationship, and your abuser has a gun and you don't, has a tank and you don't. And until we get the tanks away from the abusers, we're going to be limited in what we can do. I had to get my tags the other day. I haven't lived in Loudoun County, Virginia in 2 years. They just extorted 500, literally $500 from me in personal property tax for a vehicle that has not been there in 2 years and hasn't. It was actually, I blew up my engine. I just got it fixed a month and a half ago, so I got the tags. But I explained all this to them. They just didn't care. They're going to steal my money, and they're going to steal your money, and they've really got you in a chokehold on the roads and with the vehicles and at the airports. And so they're leveraging, and your bank account. I mean, the bank account is the, those are the places where they have these chokeholds. And so, it's going to be an education effort, to explain the scam of the system to the people that are enforcing it. And so, I was forced to pay the $500, but I sent copies of my book to every single person in the Loudoun County tax assessor's office that I talked to explain to them the illegitimacy and the criminality of what they're involved in, how they've been tricked into it, the fact that just because somebody wrote it down on a piece of paper, doesn't make it just. But like I could just tell talking, in having this conversation with these employees on the phone at the Loudoun County tax, office, that they knew, like a couple of them, you could just tell that they knew what they were doing was wrong. They know they're living off money stolen from others at the point of a gun. They know they're robbing their neighbors on a daily basis. That is, but until you get them to stop doing that, until there's enough, shame involved in robbing your friends and neighbors, and enough people in their circle understand it, and that they're saying, hey, you could get another job. You don't have to work for that place. Until that kind of social pressure is put on them, these people are going to continue to rob us.
Yeah, and they have to feel a little bit of pain. I had an issue a few years back with a county recorder who was doing something very unlawful. I pointed it out just in a very civil way, tried to have a conversation, and went up to the office and everything, and they just, pretty much grinned like, so what are you going to do about it? And I brought some processes against them
Mhm.
and held their feet to the fire. So this one lady who's a county recorder in Humboldt County here in Northern California, she did finally back down, but it was only at the point where she realized she was going to suffer some major personal losses. So I'd say that's one good thing about the processes that people are learning is we
Mhm.
can beat them at their own game, but it's but just such a waste of energy and time and just so much more productive things we could be doing. And the money system is where they've got us.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Um, so
Well,
what's
I was
this?
gonna
Go ahead,
pintail.
Mike. I was
Yeah, I was
gonna
gonna.
invite you in on this part of the conversation for alternatives to our present money system. So please go ahead.
Well, this is the thing too. So we're all about, free market. And I agree. There's a lot to the Austrian economic viewpoint I agree with, but also the problem with that is the money system itself is a debt-based system, and we've seen that what that creates is an infinite sort of growth model where the marketplace will create this sort of monopolies. And I know this has to relate to the debt system and also just to government, but let's say even if government is out of play, still with the debt-based system or with the money system where that it's reliant upon the increasing debt for it to feed itself, we have an industry that is continually looking to grow, to expand its profits, and to minimize. It's not about quality of service; it's about quantity.
Mhm.
So how do we combat that? How do we create systems that are more in line with natural law, about non-aggression, and about creating abundance cooperatively? Because even in the past, if we're looking at just the kings and queens that had all the gold, if we go back to gold standard, you had the haves and the have-nots, and those the ability to mine the gold and to keep the gold. And historically, forever for human that we've ever known, we've never had a truly free money system, right? Where it's everybody has an free and equal opportunity. It's a tricky
So
one.
it's funny because one of the things that people object to when you say, oh, getting rid of the government, they say, oh, well, the corporations would take over and it would just be all monopolies. But the system that we have right now is a creature of the government. The ability for banks to create money out of thin air, fractional reserve banking backed up by the Federal Reserve System, that is a government created entity. And when you give banks, when the government, when the banks lobbied and bribed the government in 1913 to pass the Federal Reserve Act legalizing the ability for the banks to create money out of thin air, the first thing they did is bought up the media so nobody would tell the people what was really going on. And then they began buying everything else, and they began providing unlimited capital to, certain favored corporations that are trading together as a cartel. and with this unlimited fractional reserve banking, money, they bought up the world, starting with the media. And so, in a free market, you wouldn't see anything like the monopolization that you see today. What we're dealing with is we're dealing with the problems associated with the government controlling the money supply and giving the banks a monopoly on the creation of credit in the United States in a system that is inflationary. And the more the banks create the money, they're stealing the value out of everybody else's money, the same way as if they stuck their hand in your pocket and stole your money. They're just doing it in a kind of little, more sophisticated way. But as they create more and more dollars, those dollars begin bidding for a limited amount of goods and services, and they begin bidding up prices, and that's why prices are going up and the value of your dollar is going down. Now, when we had gold and silver, it wasn't necessarily, I mean, yeah, I mean, in some ways it has been monopolized by the monarchy over time. But also, there was a gold rush in California, and individuals got into the gold and silver business, and they could go dig it up out of the ground, and there was independent wealth and there was independent money. And when we had money that was not able to be created by a printing press or through digital dollars, so there was a kind of like a cap on that. What we know is that the purchasing power of the money actually went up over time, not down. So every single year back when we had a gold and silver standard, before the Fed got involved, even so, then there's the period where the Fed was able, the banks were creating money out of thin air. They were still redeemable in dollars, but I believe they were cheating. But for the most part, during the time of hard money, your dollar bought more and more and more every year as innovations and productivity improvements reduced the cost of manufacturing and distributing the luxuries and necessities of life. And so, absent the government money system, your dollar should be buying more and more. You should be getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. But not only are we being robbed and having the purchasing power stolen out of our money, but we're being robbed of the increasing purchasing ability that we would have absent the crooked government monetary system. So we would all be wealthier if we just went, I believe if we just went back to gold and silver, because people are still, able to mine it around the world, and there's still money coming into circulation now. But in a future without government, I think you would see the free market. Who knows, who the ultimate winner is? You're seeing a little bit of it in the crypto space right now, as different coins and tokens increase in value because they have certain capabilities as money better than others. I believe Bitcoin is being propped up by the system because it doesn't threaten the government monetary system. So, like, I think Bitcoin is kind of an exception where the existing monetary system is propping up the one coin that doesn't really threaten it. And so, because the transaction fees are so high, and because the transaction speed is so low, there are many other coins on the market that do a better job of fulfilling what people want out of money, which is very low transaction fees and very fast payment settlements, not on a public blockchain, but on with privacy and things like that. And so, if there was a free market in money, where the bankers didn't have this advantage of unlimited capital prop up Bitcoin, I think that you would see better money win the day. That better money would be non-inflationary. That better money would have no way to track and trace it and tax it. That better money would be better for society than what we've got going on here with rapidly depreciating fiat paper tickets issued by a bankrupt empire.
Yeah,
Another,
that was awesome. I just want to say one thing, Bear, on the Bitcoin thing. It's inherently tethered to the very thing that it's trying to counter. So
Yes.
Bitcoin is inherently tethered to the US dollar. That's how we we see the value of it. That's the big hands, the whales that can push the markets around on the centralized exchanges. They are using the fiat system to pump it and bring it down. And it's inherently also ironically tied to Wall Street. So when Wall Street goes up, Bitcoin goes up. What's that show you? I will just say one other thing too, related to the 1800s, when we had a worldwide gold standard. Pretty much we saw, and it's funny because we talk about like Tartaria and stuff, and we ask like, how can we have all this beautiful stuff built then? Well, one theory, if you get outside Tartaria and you just think, well, this is how it was, is we had a long time preference. So this idea of time preference, which you probably are aware of, Etienne, which is when you have something with a gold standard that is probably deflationary and allows for you to save, you can actually project your values out into time because you're not stressed on losing the value of your money. So if you have a long time preference, you can build towards the future. You can put in years and years and years into building beautiful things, beautiful structures, cathedrals, and beautiful even state buildings, like all that. But then if on the flip side, if you have an extremely inflationary debt-based currency, you have a short time preference. So it's like you got to spend, 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 which is what the Keynesians like. Right. So it's spend, spend, spend. So what happens is society debilitates into this must spend now, must build stuff that can be thrown away later because we need to keep spending. So now you have what we have today, which is strip malls, and every house looks the same. And now if you have if you buy a house that's built the last 5 years, it will fall apart probably in 10 years. If you buy an appliance, expect to throw it away in a year or so. And that's due to this time preference. So yeah, I agree there about the deflationary elements around precious metals and all that, and getting government out of it. I'm just looking forward to like you said, having a true free market to develop other means of having community-based exchange that will allow us to expand our wealth based on the true credit of our substance, which ironically is what the state did in 1933 when with the Great Depression and the Banking Act and everything they did, is they even understood this. And Bear and I have talked about this a bunch on the show. But yes, I'm in firm agreement that the free market is the way. I'll just end on this, and Bear, I'll let you take over here. I'm wondering if the machine is just so big, it's just so out of control, that really the best solution, and it sounds like what Derek Brosen and John Bush are saying, and I think we're in agreement, is really we just have to go parallel. We have to be able to deal with it as much as we can, and maybe have to have the driver's license and stuff, and okay, but then focus on the bigger picture of creating our own wealth with our own currencies on our own land and our own communities and all of that, and having that parallel system built so that future generations, we can set up for that as the old system sort of dies off and self-destructs. But Bear, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it is designed to self-destruct. And, of course, we just don't want the next little part of their agenda, which is to bring us into something worse. The thing about hard metals that I was going to say that people, don't consider a lot of times is that it was a legitimate way to fund real government services, things that would actually help people. People would bring in, the gold that they would mine, for instance, and there was a minting fee. That was a huge way that governments funded themselves. So it was win-win all the way around. And with the advent of the Federal Reserve System, of course, it did away with all that. I was a little bit tickled the other day when I was seeing people melt down about the recent display of arrogance by Jerome Powell when he was asked by a reporter if he would step down if Trump asked him to, and he just said no. And people couldn't believe he said that. And I laughed because, well, it's none of Trump's business. It's a private corporation. Trump has nothing to do. US Inc. has nothing to do with Federal Reserve Inc. And, and that's the thing I think that escapes most people is, and like you said, Etienne, people saying, well, private corporations are running the show. Well, yeah, duh. Look no further than the Federal Reserve.
Yep.
And the other thing, we could talk about gold standard and everything, and I agree with everything we're talking about, but the real standard of wealth is ourselves. Full faith and credit to the American people, of course, which was coined to use against us when they brought in the fake money. but there's a lot of truth to that. Without us, there's nothing. I don't care how much gold there is in existence. And one question I'd like to ask you is, what do we do if we go back on the gold system, which would seem like a great thing, but then we also know that all the governments have been buying up all the gold, so they own all the gold. So where does that leave us?
So I'm not necessarily an advocate for I think that gold and silver would be better than
Hmm.
rapidly depreciating fiat paper tickets issued by a bankrupt empire in the same way that any commodity money would be better than rapidly depreciating fiat paper tickets. I used to give my kids their allowance in nickels because the nickel is the only US coin that is actually worth its weight in metal. And so every other coin, a dime is not worth 10 cents in metal, a quarter is not worth 10 cents in metal. The nickel is 25% nickel and 75% copper, and it's actually worth 6 cents. It fluctuates, it's been as high as 7 cents. And so if you melted it down, you could actually make money off of your nickels. But if the dollar collapsed, would you want to be holding on to a bunch of fiat paper tickets that that aren't even really good for toilet paper, or would you want a pile of the two of the most important metals in commerce, nickel and copper? And so I think that gold and silver would be better, but what I'm saying is that there's a market process that, absent the government mandated monopoly, would pick one or two or three currencies. Right now the gold back is flexible spendable gold. Like, the market is innovating and is producing flexible spendable gold that can be used in commerce and is accepted in, like, I think in Utah they've got over 1,000 merchants that are taking it, and New Hampshire I think they've got over 500 merchants that are taking it. And so the market sees a problem, and that the government's money sucks and it's losing value. There's innovation in the market comes in with flexible spendable gold. People begin accepting it, and they begin switching some of their rapidly depreciating fiat paper tickets to goldbacks, which, when I first started taking goldbacks, were worth about $3 and something, per $1 gold back, and now they're over $5 a gold back. So you've got free market money that's going up in value at the same time that you've got government money that's going down in value. And so I think if you let the free market innovate, I don't know, what the ultimate winner would be, but I know it's not going to be rapidly depreciating fiat paper tickets issued by a bankrupt empire.
Or if you just go back in time, in early colonial days, you had, I think it was Pennsylvania that came up with their own script, and the entire international community was very interested in how they were prospering more than any other country on earth at that time. So,
Yep.
yeah, I agree. If we're just left community by community to, again, self-determine, there's all sorts of ways that we can thrive together. There's bartering, there's local scripts, there's all sorts of ways
Time.
to eliminate a central bank, or even
Yeah.
think about a need to have one.
I don't know if
Time banking
you
is
guys
another one
remember.
too.
I don't know if you guys
Which one,
remember
Mike?
American
I was just saying time banking.
time
That's
banking.
Oh,
yep.
yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember American Express, but American Express used to issue their own currency. It was called the American Express check. And
Yeah.
a private corporation issued American Express travelers checks, and you
Oh
could
yeah.
go and redeem them for a variety of currencies around the world at American Express offices, banks, everything like that. They went out of business. They kind of got the American Express travelers check got replaced by the credit card. And so they no longer do it, but they've been out of business for over 2 decades. But you know what? They will still redeem your American Express travelers
Mm.
checks to this day. If you find some, they're gonna so that's the staying power of having kind of name brand companies issuing the money, where you have a choice versus, a monopoly government that is lying and tricking you into thinking that they're legitimate and running game on you and transferring trillions of dollars out the back door. And what many people are realizing is an openly criminal operation. We've got like the government is being run as essentially as an open criminal operation where they're handing trillions of dollars with a T. That's not me, misstating it. According to Bloomberg, the TARP, the TALF, the bailouts, the 2008 bailouts were trillions and trillions of dollars that were handed to private corporations. They just went and did it again during the COVID. They handed, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions, if not trillions. I don't know the exact number for the COVID quote unquote bailouts and stimulus, but they're handing money to favored corporations and banks. It's unbelievable. Like, we've got an absolute criminal government going on.
And a lot of times people will say, well, what's the big deal? They're just printing it anyways. It's not really, doesn't have basis in anything. Well, when you know what they did with the Banking Reserve Act and everything, right, in 1933, they're literally using us to indemnify their criminal behavior. So we are an implied, we're an accomplice to this if we, and that's what's so evil about the whole system. And so anybody who says, like, there's a lot of people in the truther space that, and I'm thinking of a few that are friends of mine who are saying, well, it's not government, it's the people inside government. Government in and of itself can't do anything that's harmful. And that is an interesting sort of take on it, but I would say that government is the vehicle. It's not just, you can't just, so they will say, well, government's just like a technology. It's like a gun. A gun can't hurt anybody, right? Well, I think there's a fundamental difference between something like government, which is an institutionalized philosophy, versus a tool like a computer or a gun. Would you say that, Etienne?
Well, the unfortunate thing about government is that they've given themselves a monopoly on the guns. And so they've given themselves a monopoly of the use of force over the entire geographic area known as the United States. And that's what's really so dangerous about it, is that they've, used these unethically manipulative techniques to raise this army of shave-headed cult members in the police and the military that are willing to use violence on peaceful people to impose, whatever comes out of Washington, D.C. on the population. And until we expose that, it's literally, it's a bunch of retards with all the guns. We've got to get rid of that. And that's the danger of government. The one other thing I wanted to point out, because you said something that was really, important there too, Mike, was, the fact that they're printing all this money. There's a popular meme that says, if you can print all this money, then why do everybody have to pay taxes? Like, if you've had the ability to print trillions of dollars all these years, that they're now kind of printing openly through the COVID and the stimulus and everything like that, why has everybody been paying taxes? But the reason that everybody's been paying taxes is because they're waging economic warfare on the population to keep them artificially poor. And so the taxes that they're forcing you to pay is so that they can destroy independent wealth. They want it, like the lockdowns during the COVID era. Part of that was to destroy independent businesses. They don't want anybody they don't want there to be independent wealth. They want everybody working for, these cartel companies where they've bought up the world, using fractional reserve banking, where they're organizing all of the CEOs in the World Economic Forum and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderberg Group and these kind of, I call them like front organizations, so that they can limit the amount of competition. They can drive independent, liberty-oriented people out of business. They can, force you to get a jab to keep your job. They can force you to wear a mask to go to work. They can force you to do things that you don't want, because they've been able to monopolize the world with the little paper tickets they create out of thin air. And that is a form of economic warfare against the population.
Bottom line, it's designed to destroy our will, and that's where it all goes. And the idea of government being synonymous with criminality is nothing new, which is why our founding fathers told us the inevitability of the government turning on us and that we better be ready for it.
Yeah, so the founding fathers, there were two groups of founding fathers. There were the
Yeah,
Federalists and the
exactly.
Anti-Federalists. I think we may have even touched on this the last time I was here. And
Yeah.
everybody is forced to, to read the Federalist Papers. But there's
Hmm.
another group of the collected writings of the founding fathers known as the Anti-Federalist Papers. And the Anti-Federalists, were saying, hey, these are criminals. These are conspirators. This is a bad idea. We shouldn't do this. And if you look back and you said, hey, which founding fathers were right? It was the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists had a call. They said it the entire way that we were going to be in the exact same situation that we're in, and those were the founding fathers that we should be venerating, not the ones that stuck us with this idea that was not a good idea, which frankly, I believe was a scam from the beginning. And I make the case in Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, that the whole thing was a scam from the beginning. But whether you think it was a scam or whether you think the Constitution was a good idea, at the end of the day, the Constitution, it didn't work. The Constitution was not able to protect individual rights. The Bill of Rights has not been able to protect even the basic natural law human rights outlined in the Bill of Rights. And the Constitution has not been able to limit government at all, at all, at all, at all, at all. And the idea of calling it a limited government when you've got the largest government the planet has ever seen is preposterous. And so whether you think it was a scam or just a dumb, bad idea, it didn't work. And so many people, because they're raised in these mandatory government schools by the teacher who's the priest and teaches them the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance and the holy documents of the Constitution, and takes them to the Capitol that looks like a Vatican in middle school, and to the temples to see the deities, and gets them religiously attached to
Kiss
the
the
idea
wall,
of
bro.
having a
Kiss the
government and a
wall.
constitution and everything like that, until they give up that government indoctrinated mythology, and they look at it and just go, did it work? No, it didn't work. Okay, learn our lesson, move on. It was a dumb idea. Now, what is the alternative? And so this is the good news. Like, this is literally the good news message. The good news message of Liberty on the Rocks is, the good news is that we don't really need it at all, at all, at all. That the free market and mutual aid societies and nonprofits and insurance companies, they can all provide everything the government does without the waste, fraud, and abuse. And so I think that, that is the important thing that I'm trying to do with my new book, Voluntarism, how the only ism, fair for everyone, leads to harmony, prosperity, and good karma for all. Is, if you're advocating government, whether you're advocating Republican government or you're advocating Democratic government, if you're advocating for government, you're advocating violence on your friends and
Yep.
neighbors who disagree. You're
That was the
advocating.
yeah. That was the main point I made of why I don't vote, because I don't vote for violence,
Mhm.
right? Shout out to Patrick Henry though and the Anti-Federalists, because while they quote unquote failed, the one thing that if this is going back to high school history, but they were instrumental in getting the Bill of Rights in there, including the
Mhm.
First Amendment, and that is natural law, right? That is the Declaration of Independence. Those are important elements that I think are so important that make the American experiment essential. So I only bring this up, Etienne, because with the free market, do we not also need the law? We need natural law in place so we can hold each other accountable if for some reason, I know there's market forces. If you want to go pure Austrian economics, the market forces are enough, but I still wonder if that's true, if you do not need the law in place to maintain those rights. Is that not true?
So we covered that at Liberty on the Rocks, and you can see. So that was David Friedman, who I mentioned is Milton Friedman's son, who is
Mhm.
a a legal professor in his own right, and is author of multiple books, including one called The Machinery of Freedom, where he outlines exactly how you could have almost everything the government does without the government. And he broke down how not just how you can have law without the government, but how law developed before the government. And so law isn't something that government gave us from down high. Law is something that government hijacked and took over. And the common law was there before the government, and people knew that if you stole something, that's bad, and you've got to give it back, and you've got to make, restitution. And the government came in and became the arbiter of everything that is law. But you could still have armed protective service companies, because I have, and you have, and Bear has the right to protect your life, your liberty, and your property. And because you have that right inherent in yourself, you can actually delegate. It makes sense to delegate that right to a armed protective services company to exercise on your behalf. That's logical, that's moral, that makes sense. But instead of it being a monopoly provider, you could have ADT, you could have Westech, you could have Brinks. I'm just using these because these are companies that are providing armed protective services today. You could have Detroit Threat Management. And so that armed protective service provider can, if somebody steals your television, and you can prove it to a dispute resolution provider in your community that is respected by the community, that armed protective services provider can go and get your television back. And so there's ways that this can be handled without having a monopoly provider, but the monopoly provider also doesn't, because you don't have the ability to tell your neighbor whether or not he could gamble or smoke a plant, or any of the other victimless crimes that the monopoly government arrests people for, even though it's not really a crime. You wouldn't be able to delegate a right you don't have to your armed protective service provider to exercise on your behalf. So they're not going to be wasting society's money on victimless crimes and gambling and prostitution and things like that, which aren't really crimes. They're going to be focused on murder, rape, theft, and like what people really want the police to be focused on, not wasting their time on victimless crimes. And dispute resolution, the courts. We had dispute resolution before the government took over the courts. You would have that again. David Friedman breaks it all down in Liberty on the Rocks, which will soon be available at sedona.artofliberty.org, and you can watch him explain how we can have law without the government, and you'll be like, oh, well, I didn't realize that there was so much history and historical precedent there for having law without the government. It's absolutely fascinating, just to understand how it worked in the past.
Yeah. If you haven't seen this book, can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's The Constitution That Never Was. It's a really good detail of what really drove the formation of the Constitution, who did it, and what their true purpose was. And of course, a lot of us have known forever that the Constitution has nothing to do with us. But it's really a good read. It's really a good read, and I think should be in everybody's library. Have you ever seen this one, Mike?
No, I haven't. Thank you. It's another one you
Yeah,
pulled out of the magic box.
definitely one I think we had to put up in our group there. It's a fantastic read. But anyway, it's just echoing everything you're saying, Etienne, and then gives all the background and everything about what's up with the Constitution. It's a brilliant document. Again, there's good things in it, but it has nothing to do with us. And of course, just the same as a government cannot put down words on a piece of paper to restrict our rights, you similarly can't put down pieces or words on a piece of paper to give you rights. It works both ways.
It's a great, in a free society, if you believe in the Constitution, then you can sign the Constitution and be a party to the Constitution without having to force the Constitution on everybody else. And if you want to have communism in a free society, you can go have a commune with friends. You just can't force it on anybody else. So you can have socialism, you can have democratic republicanism, you can have communism, you can have all of these, things in a free society, but you can't have a free society under communism. You can't have a free society under socialism, and you can't have a free society under constitutional republicanism. And so that really is the difference between real freedom and the fake freedom of constitutional republicanism, is that you can't truly be free. Especially in the system that we have right now. And like I said, the good news message of voluntarism in my upcoming book is really that, like miraculously, the free market and real freedom really produces the goods. And like, that's something that we already know. The, Cato Institute in the United States, Fraser Institute in Canada, they rank countries based on how much personal freedom they have and how much economic freedom they have. And the more personal freedom and economic freedom that countries have, the higher the standard of living, the less disparity in income, the healthier they are. And so we already know that freedom works. Like I said,
where are they saying? Just curious, where are they saying the spots to go?
So the United States isn't even in the top 10,
I figured not.
but Liechtenstein, Switzerland,
Oh wow.
Yeah.
a lot of like the little principalities in Europe do really really well in those rankings. In the United States, when they rank the states against each other, New Hampshire, where the Free State Project has been having tremendous success over the past 10 years. New Hampshire ranks the highest in the United States in Cato's annual survey. It has for it's either been number one or number two for a long time. They have no state income tax. They have no state sales tax, and yet they have tremendous amount of prosperity. They have one of the least regulatory burdens in the country. And so real freedom produces the goods. They, at one time, I think they had the lowest amount of children living in poverty. They had the lowest amount, they had the highest average per capita income, one of the highest, if not one, like number two per capita incomes in the country. And so that's just an example that, that people can understand. Okay, we get rid of sales tax and income tax in the states that have the least government and the lowest taxation have the wealthiest people, and they've got the least amount of poverty and children living in poverty.
Interesting. They live right next door to Vermont, which is the exact opposite. I know a lot of people in that part of the world, and of course, there's a great rift between Vermonters and the New Hampshireers. Just such a radically different philosophy and type of people. Too bad the weather sucks in New Hampshire, huh?
It's
Otherwise,
funny
we'd all
'cause
be living there.
yeah, I know. So the other kind of funny thing about it is, so they're also right next to Massachusetts, and
All right.
there is a tremendous amount of people that live along the border of Vermont and Massachusetts that used to live in Vermont and used to live in Massachusetts, and are like going, why the hell are we here? Why don't we just move right across the border? And now we don't have a state income tax, and now we don't have a state sales tax. The same dynamic with Delaware. There's a whole bunch of businesses that are right across the border, where people from Massachusetts, they don't, they're not going to buy their liquor in or their appliances or whatever in Massachusetts. They're going to drive right across the border. And so capital goes where it's wanted and stays where it's treated well. And so that's the dynamic that people have been voting with their feet. They've been leaving New York, they've been leaving Massachusetts, they've been leaving California. Like, you can't get U-Haul will give you a deal if you'll take a U-Haul back to California because everybody is going out of California, nobody's going, the other way. And so people are starting to vote with their feet, and they're starting to get away from, these oppressive state governments, which in some ways are just as bad and just as onerous as the illegal organized crime federal government, and they're going to jurisdictions that have less tax and regulatory burdens.
The Fiat Dust Bowl. It's funny. I'm reading Grapes of Wrath right now, the great Steinbeck novel. It's like, it's the Fiat Dust Bowl as the cities are crumbling, right? And this, like, with all the waste and the state underreach, really, they're just allowing it to just degrade into third world state. So Etienne, just to kind of circle back here, the solutions, right? So it's hard for a lot of people, even myself, who's been involved in this for so long and learning the law and everything and building community, to wrap my head around a society that is truly free.
Mhm.
Because I think we all see the benefit of like New Hampshire being a state that's actually respecting freedom. It makes life a lot easier. Yes, in California here, if we know the lawfare, we know how to get around a lot of this stuff. It's still a lot of work. It's a pain in the ass. It'd be a lot easier if we just lived in a society that respected freedom. So where do you see like the inroads and the pathways to that right now? And what are some of your favorite sort of solutions that you could propose to our community?
So, really, what my new book, Voluntarism, How the Only Ism, Fair for Everyone Leads to Harmony, Prosperity, and Good Karma for All is doing is really breaking down how you can have everything that you want from government without the government. And like I said, I used the example earlier of the invisible hand, but I'll just throw out some other things where real freedom delivers the goods, produces public goods for free without the waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption of government. We talked about the invisible hand. Another one is market competition. And so in market competition, anybody can charge whatever they want, but when you have the freedom not to have a monopoly, the government says, they have a monopoly on the delivery of mail, only they have a monopoly on passenger rail service, only they have a monopoly on air traffic control and so many other areas of your life. But when you have market competition, you have choice. You don't have to buy your gas at $3.50 a gallon. You can go to the guy that's selling it for $2.75. Or you don't have to, buy X for $1 if somebody else is selling it for 50 cents. And that market competition kind of stabilizes the market and keeps people, from gouging the customer. Another one is called the discipline of constant dealings. And the discipline of constant dealings is, many businesses could cheat. The guy at the grocery store, he could calibrate his pump to only give you 0.90 gallons instead of a full gallon. But through the discipline of constant dealings, he knows if he does that and he gets caught, then nobody is going to do business with him, and he's going to lose the entire business. And so that's, a market mechanism that keeps, businesses honest, that they don't, gouge or rip off the customer. Another one
Well,
is,
it's like Airbnb reviews, right? Or Uber.
oh
Like
yeah,
if same idea there. Like if you are going to be shady and stuff, the consumer will figure it out. They will report you and you'll get a bad rating, and then people will choose not to do business with you.
eBay is the same way. Uber driver ratings is the same way. And so there's all of these mechanisms in the free market that balance the needs of the consumer with the needs of the producers. Another one is the price mechanism, which is one of my favorites. And when a hurricane is headed to Florida and the price of plywood goes through the roof, everybody gets mad and they're like, oh, they're gouging and those bastard capitalists, and they're ripping people off. Well, yes and no. What that price mechanism is doing is saying, hey, Florida needs plywood and it needs it now. And there doesn't have to be a FEMA, and there doesn't have to be anything like that. All of a sudden, people in Alabama in Mississippi and in the states around Florida, they all begin mobilizing. They begin getting plywood as fast as humanly possible into Florida, and then the market stabilizes again, and the price comes down and everything like that. But that price signal is the market saying, "Hey, we need plywood in Florida." And I could go on and on about those, but a lot of the other, examples in the book are, you would be surprised at how many private companies are providing services that people think of can only be provided by the government. I use the FAA as an example, where NAV Canada, is the private corporation that handles, air traffic control in Canada. But there's Rural Metro and Fiber that provides, rural Metro Fire, which provides firefighting, EMS, and other firefighting services, as a private company, all throughout the country, where most people only think that fire protection comes from the local government. The insurance companies would provide fire protection if the local county and municipalities didn't mandate that they be the ones that do it. Nobody's going to insure your building if it has the ability to burn down, and so the insurance companies would make sure that there was fire protection. There is one example that I gave in Sedona that was exceedingly timely is pickleball. And so we did advertising in Sedona to get the locals to the thing, and I get an email from the local paper, and Sedona had just opened up 8 pickleball courts for a cost of $1.6 million. Let me just repeat that for those listening at home. Sedona just bought 8 outdoor pickleball courts for $1.6 million. And I looked right at that headline, and I called a guy that I know here in Memphis, Tennessee, where we go play pickleball, and it's called Willow Grove Pickleball Paradise. And I go, "Hey, Sedona just spent $1.6 million on their pickleball courts. You have almost the exact same pickleball courts. How much did you spend?" And which is a much better place, like a really beautiful place here, where they've got, like, nestled into the woods, and they've got horses that come up and let you pet them, and they've got varieties of exotic chickens that roam the grounds. And so he's got 6 outdoor courts, including fencing and everything, that he paid less than $100,000 for his 6 outdoor
Of course.
courts. He's building 5 indoor courts right now, and he's going to pay between $325,000 and $350,000 for 5 indoor climate-controlled courts. So he's going to have more courts for 1/3 the cost of what the city of Sedona did. He charges $5 to play all day long. You can come and go. You can come back and whatever. It's cheaper if you buy monthly or a yearly deal, and he lets you play for free if you can't afford it. Okay, so he's providing a public good. He built 11 pickleball courts. Sorry, what is it, like? So yeah, 11 pickleball courts. Okay, he didn't extort anybody. He didn't use a gun. He's providing the exact same service that the government did. Okay, except the government is ripping the people off. Like, I did the math. I actually did the math. If you gave each of those 8 courts in Sedona, if each court had 4 solid gold pickleball paddles, the average pickleball paddle is 8 ounces. And if you had, each court had 4 paddles made of solid gold, that'd be 32 paddles times 8 ounces times $2,775 per ounce of gold. That would only be $700,000. Where did all the money go? Where did the $1.6 million go to buy these
Well, we know, Etienne, we know the whole thing about $1 million toilet seats for the military industrial complex. We know it's all,
This is a town of
cronyism and
10,000 people in Arizona. There's 10,000 people in this town.
It's insane. Well, this brings up a good question, though. So if anything, that's going to provide a place for homeless to live, right? So the public square, right? So obviously the idea with the public parks and things, it's providing spaces for people to enjoy, that the community can enjoy. But I know of many actual, when I was in Australia a couple of months ago, we went to this preserve to try to find some wallabies. And it was actually a private preserve that the owner had just opens up for the public to use, and it was gorgeous. So my question is, how do we deal with the public space, the public sphere, in terms of having beautiful places for the public to enjoy in a private, free market run world?
Thank you for that. So funny enough, one of
I
my
wanted
other
to toss that pickle to you to
oh
hit
well,
with your
yeah, a
racket,
little
the
like
ball.
softball. I did not. We did not engineer this before the thing. I promise you. But that was something else that I addressed in my address to Liberty on the Rocks, and I gave the example of the North Maine woods. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but in Maine, there is an area called the North Maine woods. It is twice the size of Massachusetts.
Wow.
It is 3.5 million acres of privately protected land. It is the majority of it is timber companies own it, but there's a lot of private owners as well, and there's environmental groups that have, that are protecting certain aspects of it as well. And then they all pool in a kind of nonprofit called the North Maine Woods that manages the entire, kind of the area. It has private roads, it has hunting, it has fishing, it has camping, it has everything, all of the amenities that you would expect from a national park or a state park. It's got it at comparable rates. And so
It probably stayed open during the Corona hoax.
I don't know the answer to that question, but it
Because that
probably
was the thing. You
did.
couldn't go to any of those places. All the wilds were shut down because you didn't want to give the robins the the cough.
And so that's the benefit of having private places versus government places. Just one of the other kind of benefits of having private places versus others. But the takeaway is that this isn't, voluntarism and the free market isn't something that's pie in the sky. It's going on all around you. Most people just don't know about it. And so what I'm trying to do with my new book, Voluntarism, is really expose people to that. Like, oh, I did not know about the North Maine woods. Oh, I did not know that the Canadians were had privatized air traffic control over a decade ago. Oh, I did not know that people, that rural metro fire is providing private fire protection. Oh, I did not know that Willow Grove Pickleball Paradise is providing the exact same thing that the government does, except better, without the waste, fraud, abuse, extortion, taxation of government. And so once people understand, I think I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, I know the government is corrupt. I know the government's criminal, but what are you going to do? Who's going to build the roads? And so if they only understood, which by the way, we had Dr. Walter Block gave a presentation. Actually, he got sick, but I just recorded it with him. It'll be in the archive footage. He wrote the book on privatizing roads and highways, and
he's pretty hilarious. He even makes a case that the oceans would be better if they're privatized.
He does. And so, but in the case of the roads, the government roads are killing 40,000 people a year. 40,000.
Believe me, I know, as a volunteer firefighter.
Well, all you have to do is travel the highway in California here and watch Caltrans cruise, where you have about 6 guys just standing there doing nothing every time you drive by. The main crime in all this is, the free enterprise versus government services. Is free enterprise cultivates a standard of excellence. Mm-hmm. And that's so important. And I grew up in a different generation, people from different countries, my ancestors. And, we were taught to take pride in everything we do. And I think that's the real thing we're missing. Government workers, it's just get by, watch the clock, don't care about other people. So not only does free enterprise cultivate pride in everything you do, but it also cultivates an authentic sense of altruism because as you prosper through the free enterprise system, then you just naturally give back. And
Yes.
that's what's missing in government workers. They take. They don't know how to give. They don't know how to do anything but take. They don't know how to produce. They don't, there's no consideration for other sentient beings. And that's the real thing that we're missing in our humanity. And that's the thing that government kills, absolutely kills.
I want to jump on that because you're absolutely right. And another aspect of that, there's two aspects that I want to address there. Number one, not only do they take, they don't pay taxes. And so there's a
Yeah, right.
huge misconception that government employees are paying taxes, but that's actually not true. Government employees do not pay taxes. Taxes are what is collected from the productive members of society that offer goods and services that people want. They pay taxes, and then there's a pool of taxes. And out of that pool of taxes, the government employees receive taxes. They don't pay taxes, they just receive less taxes and think that they pay taxes. But when you actually break it down, they're like, I've done it for a number of different ones. I've done it for the principal of my kid's school, government school. I've done it for police officers before. When you actually explain it to them, they're like, oh my God, I've never really thought about it that way. They think they're taxpayers because they're receiving less taxes, but they're not paying any taxes at all. We're the ones that are paying all the taxes. They're receiving and living off taxes stolen from others at the point of a gun. That's number one. The other important thing that I wanted to, add on to what you said was in a free market economy, the people that make the money are the people that are satisfying the consumer and innovating and delivering something that people want. Some people compete on quality, some people compete on cost. Some people innovate and produce it a little bit better or a little bit different or customize it for you or whatever it is. But in an economic transaction, both sides win or there wouldn't be an economic transaction. In the organized crime government system, where the banks are creating money out of thin air and giving it to cartel companies to buy up and monopolize their competition, that's not free market. That's not capitalism. It's actually called cronyism, and there's nothing free market about it. People are thinking, oh, like look how we're doing under capitalism. We're not under capitalism. We're under a mixed economy and cronyism. It's technically called cronyism, but the bad people end up making all of the money. The JP Morgan Chases, the people that are robbing society by stealing the value out of the money, they're making all of the money and they're scumbags. Elon Musk has gotten over $17 billion from the government, not including the value of having the tax credits, which made Tesla what it is today. And so you take away those government privileges and those $17 billion, like I don't think that he would be doing as well as he was doing if he wasn't cheating. And so the free market keeps the profits in the pockets of the people that are serving humanity by providing what they want better, faster, and cheaper than the other guys. And that's the way you want. You want a meritocracy. You don't want a bureaucracy.
Yeah,
And the irony in your first point is the government employees, the people that actually do the wet work on behalf of the criminals, they're technically the only ones that the IRS code applies to. You have to be a federal employee. And, they're the ones that are making bank and getting all the perks and having, the great pensions and everything else at our expense. But they're the only ones on the hook technically for the federal income tax. Of course, the
Correct.
rest of us volunteer into it without understanding that we aren't federal employees, that we're actually foreign to that jurisdiction, but that's another whole story.
By the way, I'll just give you a quick personal anecdote. So I live here
Yeah.
in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm personally friends with Vernice Kuglin, who beat the IRS in court. She's a personal friend of mine. She was a pilot at FedEx, and
Mhm.
she went to court against the IRS. and the IRS and said, "Hey, I've been writing you letters. Show me the law that makes me, liable for this tax." And what for people that have never heard this before, the short explanation is that the 16th Amendment really didn't give the government the ability to institute an
Right.
income tax because of the apportionment clause. The apportionment clause says
Right.
all direct taxes must be apportioned, they must be legal. The IRS doesn't want to go to court over the apportionment clause, so what they do is they just say, they trick the population into saying, okay, well, if you're liable for the tax, and then everybody assumes that they're liable for the tax because the mandatory government school taught them that they were liable for the tax and never really explained how the scam works or anything like that. And so most people, they don't go to jail for not paying the tax. They go to jail because they sign on dotted lines saying that, number one, that they're liable, and number two, that they made this amount of money. So if they misrepresent their income under oath in the government's court system, they go to jail for signing and saying that they're liable and for misrepresenting their income. And
Yeah,
so
it's breach
so
of
Vernie
contract and perjury.
so Vernie Kugeland took the IRS to court she went to FedEx and she said, "I want you to quit withholding taxes out of my account because I'm not liable for the tax." And FedEx did it. They quit taking it. And when it got to $250,000, then the IRS went after her criminally. And so she went to court, and you can go read it in the New York Times. She beat the IRS in court because the jury was like, "Yeah, show us the law that makes her liable for the tax." And they weren't able to produce it. And so the jury said, "Hey, you guys are scamming us," and let her go. Now, the IRS went after her civilly, and they waged lawfare on her, and they went to war against her to make an example out of her in something that can only be called cruel and unusual. And they because she'd beaten them and in the New York Times and everything like that. But most of the time, they just let you go when you get up to, because they don't want to go to court. They don't want to set that precedent the way they did. And so I, back then when all this was going on, I knew her. She told me about it. So I did the exact same thing. I went to my company and I said, "I want you to quit withholding taxes. I'm not liable for this tax." I worked for my best friend's dad at the time, and so I knew the inside skinny of what was going on in the background, and I heard about it from the family, and so they had to hire a law firm. This was in 1996. They had to pay the law firm $40,000 in 1996 money, and the law firm goes, "Okay, we'll research this," and they come back and they say, "Hey, you know what? We thought this kid was crazy, but he's right. There's not really a law that says that you have to pay taxes." And so,
There is no law.
I know for a fact that there's not a law that you don't have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And so, and there's
Many,
Ironically, the IRS is the ultimate voluntarist.
a lot of
Well,
them aren't
voluntary.
paying taxes. No, there's a huge amount of IRS employees that have not been paying their own taxes, and then that's like that came out publicly. I forgot the specific details of that, but a lot of them aren't volunteering as well,
many
even though
years
they're actually
ago,
required to.
I was just going to say many years ago, before I learned a lot of the fancy stuff, I was looking at a little kerfuffle surrounding willful failure to file, which is, one of their main little tax that they use. And what I did is I solicited about 6 different letters from tax attorneys, accountants, and people that knew there was no law.
Mhm.
They wrote me brilliant letters on their official letterhead and everything, and I presented that, and the willful failure to file went away. I probably wouldn't work these days. I don't know, but that was, back in the early days of some of us where we're starting to investigate this stuff. So if you have real professionals that are saying, wow, there's no law, I don't think you have to file, then it's pretty tough for the IRS to make that case against you.
Mhm.
And for me, it worked. And I know other individuals that did the same thing. And we're all in Hawaii in the Hawaiian sovereignty movement together, back in those times, like in the early 90s or something. So yeah, there's so many angles that they're vulnerable to, but then it goes back to the situation where you're dealing with people with guns,
Yeah.
and that's the only way they can ever get their way.
Yeah, I would say being an honor. So in commerce, the one who's an honor wins. So if your friend got up on them, but then is in the news and is making a stink of it, that could be seen as dishonorable. And yeah, so like if you are going to take on the IRS in that way, keep your head down, stay in the private about it. But Bear's right. We've talked about a bunch on here. Revocation of election. There's commercial protests. There's different remedy. There's status correction as a national. There's all sorts of ways to go about it. So we talk about that a lot in our private platform. If you guys are interested, we're not on Patreon. We don't do Patreon anymore, but you can join us over there at alfavedic.com /join-us, where we talk about all this good stuff, because there's so much remedy, right? There's so many ways to counter their offers. And really, that's in the end, they're just offering us. They're like the devil on our shoulder saying, hey, do you want this? Can we give you this service? Do you want this, this side of the equation here? And we're figuring out ways to actually stand in our square and not accept those offers, and to reverse all the proffers that we have made to them. But we're coming up on 2 hours here, Etienne. Any final things to end on a note here of voluntarism and self-determinism?
Well, I would just say that really the good news message of the conference and my upcoming book is that we really don't need government. And I honestly believe that if most people understood that real freedom would deliver the goods, and they would be, much happier, more prosperous, and dramatically wealthier than they are under the government system, that people would abandon that system. And so if you or anybody that you know has any doubt in your mind that we could be more harmonious and more prosperous in a world without government, then Sedona.artofliberty.org, Liberty on the Rocks, Sedona, the Voluntarism Conference, will in the next couple of days we'll have all of the different speakers and talks available for free, both on Sedona.artofliberty.org and on Civil, CIVL.com, which is a new free streaming platform competing with Netflix for libertarians and intellectuals and voluntarists. And so take a look at those. Sessions to really, to understand and internalize that, oh, we don't really need government. And then I've got an Indiegogo going on for my new book, Voluntarism, How the Only Ism that's fair for everyone leads to harmony, prosperity, and good karma for all. That's at voluntarism-book.org. I'm raising $25,000 in this Indiegogo by pre-selling the book to be able to get it the lowest cost print run, and to get a marketing campaign behind the book, because I want to be the one that explains to the world that you don't really need government. And so if anybody would like to pre-order a book, it's voluntarism-book.org.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again for being with us, Etienne. And I think also it's important. I think one of the main premises of voluntarism is we really also respect the rights of others to choose slavery. And we have no interest in messing with the slaves on someone else's plantation. That's what used to really get people in trouble in my day, when you just went out and started interfering with other people's business, which includes the folks that are running the plantation. So I think we can get along a lot further and quicker if we just kind of, you know, gather within ourselves and understand, you know, what's right for us and not look at anybody else's affairs. So it's a two-way street. You know, to be a true voluntarist, you have to lose that tendency to want to interfere in other people's lives, even if you think they'd be better off doing something. So it's a great philosophy and a great way of living. And thank you, thank you. This is a great conversation, and I think it's one that really we should ponder, you know, deeply as we go into this next term of here in the U.S. with the new administration. And I think it's probably going to be entertaining, but it's really incumbent upon us to, you know, take back the reins of power within ourselves and not look at somebody else. So keep up the great work, and thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you guys, and it's great to see you again. And I look forward to future conversations.
This was
Awesome.
awesome. Thank you. Artofliberty.org is the best place probably to go just to get directed to everything, right,
Absolutely.
Etienne?
Yep, yep.
So that's in the show notes below. Please go support. I love your Substack. I've been subscribed to it since you basically launched it. I appreciate your memes and everything you're doing on there. Thank you so much. And yeah, as Bear said, we wave the flag of neutrality here. We are really representing all about peace and non-aggression, and just leave us alone. We're the leave us alone people. Like,
But we
get off my
also
lawn and leave
have
me
guns.
alone.
Those, but we also have guns, so don't fuck with us.
um, but yeah, and I'll just end on this too. It's like when you're around a bunch of voluntarists, it's not like, this is the thing, it's not a bunch of like selfish, you know, chaos driven anarchists or something. These are like loving, beautiful folks that really care about each other and care about their family and their community. And it's beautiful to be in these communities. And I do hope to make it out to one of those events one of these days. It's always like the same time that I got something else going on, like I wanted to go out to Porcupine Fest forever, but it's always like right when Music and Sky is happening or anything.
I want to go to Music and Sky. Music and Sky is the one that I've not been to. I've been to almost all of them else except I want to go to Music and Sky and the Midwest
Oh, what's his name's one?
Peace and Freedom.
Yeah, he's a big Cordal guy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mike Swadix. I haven't been
Mike
to his
Swadek.
yet. Yeah.
He's awesome. Well, we tried to get you to come Music and Sky. I think was it last year, and it just couldn't work. Yeah, we've had Larkin be the keynote speaker there last year. We had David Rodriguez do an awesome talk, and I mean, we're all voluntarists there. In fact, on an end note here, we got hit up by people behind the RFK Jr. campaign to come and bring a booth in.
Hmm.
And you know, we're all about freedom and stuff, like Bear was saying, like, but I was talking to the guys that do the event with, and they were like, absolutely not what we're about.
Yep.
We're not gonna do it. So yeah, and you know, it's funny, like we'll see where it all goes, as Bear was saying. And if anything, when you're coming from our perspective, you get to sit back and sort of laugh and enjoy and watch the show, but not get emotionally involved with it. And I think we're at that stage right now, guys, where we are all about not taking part, right? And helping educate. And then doing the little things to start making this reality become true, like what Alfa Vedic's doing with our regenerative business model and permaculture and being an entrepreneur. And, you know, we used to take crypto on alfavedic.com, and it just wasn't making sense for us because a lot of that crypto, unfortunately, was so tethered to US dollars. But like eventually I want to set it up on Cordal. Eventually we'd love to take the gold bills, or you're saying the gold back
The
bills
gold
and
bag.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
implementing these things in our businesses by being entrepreneurs is an amazing pathway towards this, guys. So if you're still working for you know, an agency or a big corporation, and you're feeling called to like find a new path, hit us up, join us over at Alfa Vedic. We've got groups in there trying to help each other do our own business and start our own businesses, because I think that's a major way. I know, Etienne, you're an entrepreneur, right? You've stuck your neck out on the line.
Oh
Could
yeah.
you ever see yourself going and back? Because you came from, we talked about this on the first show you were with on us. You came out of finance, right? Or
Well,
media
I was a technology entrepreneur.
technology.
I had a consulting company that worked for Fortune 50, 100, 500 companies in the field of telepresence and visual collaboration. And so I'd help, companies learn at the speed of light and, what's the technology that you put into into a corporation that will give you a competitive edge and being able to share information faster at higher qualities. And so but I'm at 100% have been a neck on the line entrepreneur, and I'm doing almost the exact same thing with the Art of Liberty Foundation. We're a startup public policy organization. We want to be like a Cato or a Heritage, but from a principled voluntarist perspective. And so we're really the only guys that are out there that are saying, hey, all the other ones, they're all playing along with government. We want to have the exact same, quality scholarship of a think tank from a principled, voluntarist perspective, that the government is not legitimate, it's not desirable, and it's not necessary. And then the other thing that we're doing that is unique in the marketplace is we're saying, hey, this is an organized crime system. This is the government is being run by as a criminal enterprise, and it's the government and media in on it together, and we're building the intellectual case to expose that partnership. And we're saying, hey, let's go after this. We don't have a politics problem. We have an organized crime problem. We're having the government and this media system, engineer this brute force consensus that it's legitimate, desirable, and necessary, and they're lying and they're scamming, and it's against our own interests.
Beautiful. Well, we will support you. I was just bringing that up at the end just to firmly state it's about collaborating and supporting each other. So we will do everything in our power to support you. Like crowdfunding stuff's great, affiliate stuff, all of that is like we create our own consortiums in a way, but built on freedom, built on all of these things, the non-aggression principle. And that's a very, very powerful thing that we can do for each other. So we'll be actually launching an new affiliate model for Alfa Vedic for those who have audiences that want to help share our stuff and share a piece of the pie, so all sorts of great solutions. Well, thank you again, Etienne. Thank you, everybody, joining us on the chat today. We love you. This is a super, super important topic, and we appreciate you being there in the chat and sharing all your ideas. And once again, remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go show Mother Nature some love. She is a voluntarist at heart, for sure. And we'll see you next week, next Thursday, 10 a.m. Same bat channel, same bat time. Love you. Peace, guys.
All right.